Welcome back to another episode of Bopcast. My name is Ryan R. Sullivan, also known as Sully Bop, and I interview outliers who are breaking the mold regardless of the status quo. Today on the show, we have somebody that fits this definition to a T. His name is Julian Dorey. He's the host of Trendifier. He's a content creator. His clips have been seen by tens of millions of people, and he's garnered a following of over 400,000 on all platforms in the last year and a half. Just a little context on this interview. We actually recorded two interviews because my power went out when we were recording the first one. So this is actually the recovered version, the recovered file from that first part. So this is part one, and next week I'm going to bring you part two. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe so you can catch that part two next week. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and leave us a comment on what you thought about the interview. Thank you so much again for tuning in to another episode of Bopcast. All right, guys, let's get to the show.
3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bopcast. Today on the show, I have my man, Julian Dorey. How are you, man?
I'm good, bro. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. It's great. It's great having you here. I haven't been following you that long. I just noticed your content. I really enjoyed the quality of it, and I respected it, and I said, this guy's doing something, and I didn't even know you were in Jersey. I just liked your content, and I'm like, oh shit, dude. Like, this is another like creator who's actually doing a conversational based show. I'll set a little bit of context for people before we go in, but you have this podcast, you have this story. You weren't always a podcaster, weren't always a content creator, and it's just been pretty interesting to me to see. When I saw it on the outside, I'm like, all right, this guy knows what he's doing. But I didn't realize it's not like you've been doing this for 10 years.
No, I'd done media work for, I guess, like a couple years leading up to doing the podcast, but we had on-site producers at live events. They put the fucking mic on me, and I'm just like, all right, well, I hope it works, and that was it.
Were those interviews like when you're interviewing some, like there was like it looked like kind of a banking or some kind of like seminar or something. I don't know if that was before your podcast. It was deeper on your Instagram.
Oh, the Maxwells. Yeah, that was one of them. The Maxwells they're an annual football award system, so they did like college and NFL awards, always down in AC. So we did content there in 3 years ago, March 2019, and that was one of my maybe the first real soiree into like doing it on camera. But yeah, like when we did events like that, we'd have the on-site guy who we brought, and he'd like put everything up, doing the mic that's actually on you, like the remote mic, not an actual mic like this. And I'd be like, all right, we're good. All right, you tell me when. And that was it. So no, I had never really done it. And then, everything came together, and then I started doing this.
Where were you? Let's take it back a little bit. Before Trendifier happened, that's the name of your podcast. That's what you've built a brand around. I'm not sure if you've built other brands like that before, but that's your current podcast, very successful. But what was your job before that?
I worked on Wall Street. I was a private banker. So, like, I guess titles among them were like financial advisor and stuff like that. But my team that I worked with, we worked exclusively with what's called ultra high net worth, which is an actual term, not to sound like a douchebag. But we worked with really fucking rich people, and we did every single thing in their financial life, soup to nuts. We also worked with companies on things like sometimes we do like public companies 10b5-1 plans. We do something as simple as like a 401k, which was really just an excuse to help a company manage the basics of what their plan is and be able to talk with their people who are major executives and things like that. But it was a full, all-encompassing financial program that we ran, and we were within, at the time it was Merrill Lynch, which is owned by Bank of America. Bank of America is a horrible company, by the way. Neither here nor there. But we were there, and I did that for 4 or 5 years.
Did you know you were going to do that before that? Like in college?
No. I never really thought about anything. When I was in college, it was like, I had a great time at college, but my view on the world had always just kind of been, you do this, then you do that, then you do that, then you do that. I never really thought about what that all meant or what that felt like. And to put that in English, I kind of figured like you just go to school. So, you're in high school, you get as good grades as you can, do the extracurriculars or whatever the fuck that shit is. And then you get into college and you kind of do the same thing. Now you just drink and fuck on the weekends. And then when you get out of college, you get a job. You go to the job fair while you're a senior. You figure out a respectable industry to go into, and then you work your way up, and maybe you're married by 30 and having kids by 32 and on your way building a 401k. Like I didn't even think of it that deeply. But the point is, it wasn't like, well, what else is out there? Like what could I do here? It was never, I just kind of, like, I had a great time, but I went with the flow. So when it came time to start thinking about jobs, I'd done internships like each summer. And then I don't know what it was, but I got into my senior year of college, like right before my senior year. I was thinking like, oh, well, maybe I should just go to Wall Street. That makes sense. All right, let's do it. And then I interviewed with a lot of companies that weren't Wall Street too. But then I ended up meeting the guy who became my boss, who to this day I'm like this with, very, very close. And one thing led to another, and he hired me. So that was the whole thing. And then I ended up working straight out of college on Wall Street pretty much.
What was it like being in a company like that versus like beforehand? Like your idea of, I should just go to Wall Street. That makes sense.
That was horrible.
So the transition or the actual job itself?
The transition didn't feel like anything because I didn't know what to look for. But then once I got in there, I don't know how you feel about like corporations and companies.
I have opinions.
I think we have two camps of people. The people who are like, this is how things are done. And the people who are like, you're Bernie Sanders, like, they're taking everything from us, like that whole bit. And they shouldn't exist. They're very bad. I think when you hear my rhetoric of how I talk about it, I will come across as more of a Bernie Sandersite. But to be clear, I recognize that that's not realistic. Corporations are a very, very important part of society. They provide a lot of jobs. There's a lot of great things they do. So I try to be careful with that. But an enormous issue that exists in anything that I got exposed to, because for a little clarification, a big part of my job was knowing everyone, getting out there in the world, seeing who talks to who, why, what industries work with each other, how this works, how that works, because we had to build relationships with people making money. So that includes everyone.
For sales or what?
To get clients. So as I started to learn that, I could also see a lot of other corporations that functioned in a similar way on the negative end, which is what happens in these corporations is you have people who report to people who report to people who report to people, and they all have these different bullets in their job description, which you can literally see when you apply to a job. And so everyone worries about their house, right? The things that they have to worry about, which perfectly fair in a lot of ways, but there's an elimination on how much thinking and creativity and cohesion is allowed based on, well, no, you don't talk to that person because that person talks to that person. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And on Wall Street, in their defense, it's on a whole nother level, especially at banks, because of the overregulation that has occurred. Now, I got interested in Wall Street because I studied the 08-09 crisis. I was so curious about that. While it was happening, too. I was young. I was a kid. But I was like, well, this is weird. What's going on? And
how old were you?
I was 15, 14, something like that. And, there were people who did awful things. Like real, and they didn't go to jail either, which is a disgrace. There are some scumbag, straight...
verified, though, that they did these.
Verified.
This is not a conspiracy. This is...
They quite literally, none of them went to jail. But these people... I don't want to go on a whole lesson on it, but these people created bullshit products that they sold as gold. And they then, when they would sell it...
Physical products?
No. They would... all right, let's go into it a little bit.
Yeah.
In the 2000s, due to legislation that occurred in the late 90s and then throughout the Bush presidency, you had, among other things, a huge movement on new home buyers, right? And the access to mortgages, which in a lot of ways... very fair motives there. People should be able to get a house if they want to. But it created a system where banks, for example, had the freedom to go into lenders and say, oh, you just loaned so-and-so that contract for whatever percent, we'll buy it off you right now and you'll make your 3% or whatever it is profit immediately and be able to go out and give another one, because we're going to take that mortgage, we're going to bundle it up with a bunch of other mortgages, we're going to give it a rating and stamp it right on top and sell it as a bond to all these pension funds and all these places that buy passive income, right? All these huge investment vehicles. And so when that, and this might be getting a little complicated, but when that happened, once you're paying off the lender and incentivizing them to now have free money that they just got in to go out and give more loans, what's going to happen? They're going to give more loans.
Yeah, it's an incentive to give more loans.
Exactly. So as you give more loans, you get lower and lower down the totem pole of people who deserve them. And as you're giving more and more, and you're not taking on debt, right? Because they're just selling it out the back door to Wall Street. Well, now you don't give a fuck if you're giving it to Johnny down the street making $40,000 a year, buying a $1.4 million house. These were one-sheeters. So even off of Wall Street, it created a whole bad system in the mortgage industry. And then Wall Street connected it back to the whole insurance industry, which some people say sometimes is a part of Wall Street. I disagree. I think it's, there are financial services, but they're a separate end of it. So they go to places like AIG and they'd say, oh, by the way, let's make some more money. You guys put insurance on this shit we just put together. AIG's sitting there going, well, fuck yeah, it's like AAA rated. Let's do it, And they just do their whatever. What's the insurance term?
Oh, shit, man.
It starts with an S, maybe. It's like the risk assessment kind of thing. Whatever it is.
Check it out.
Yeah, so they do their little risk assessment, and everything looks okay. And over time, if people saw The Big Short, some of that movie went way too fast to really understand it. Like, I even had to go.
But pretty good movie in terms of representation.
Very good movie is my point in terms of representation. Like, it just created this thing where it happened so quickly and inflated so quickly that you literally had to be like Steve Carell's team and send guys down to Florida to neighborhoods and see empty neighborhoods and be like, holy shit, there's a bubble. Where it's like, there's a bubble, sell everything. Yeah. And there weren't a lot of people that saw that. So Congress responded, people were angry, they had every right to be. And one of the ways Congress responded was by legislating against all of Wall Street. Mm-hmm. And this is the problem. This is where I see no middle ground in society. Another example. We live in extremes. We go from not legislating them at all, letting some of their teams allow this to happen. Again, these are isolated teams who are in one part of a bank. There's a million other people at the bank who have no idea what they're doing, but they fuck everyone over. So then everybody gets fucked over. Mm. And the job becomes, you got to ask for permission for toilet paper just to wipe your ass. And that's what I started to see when I was working in there. I'm like, every little thing that should be common sense that you're allowed to do, we're not allowed to do. Huh. How is that sustainable? And it wasn't, as the industry's been blowing up. The pandemic just kind of sped that part up, I think.
So what year was this when you were recognizing that?
I remember the day I recognized it for the first time. It was, I want to say September 2016, early on.
Was it you on your own? Or?
It was me on my own. We had a guy who ran our office, and this is typical management, right? Where's the company suit? He's got to go with all the talking points, whatever. One of my first meetings working there, months before, he had come in and shit on this rule called the upcoming Department of Labor Fiduciary Standard. And no one knew what it was yet because it hadn't come out, but there were rumors about what it was going to be. And he got up there and he was basically making like backhanded Obama jokes, like all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, whatever, I guess the guy's got his opinions. I didn't know what the fuck the law was going to be. Yeah. I was sitting there falling asleep listening to him talk about it. But he's shitting on it. And so then September 2016, the law comes out as to what it's going to be. And he calls, a week later, he calls a giant company-wide meeting. We worked at one of the biggest offices at Merrill Lynch. Like all the different advisors working there. It was like top 3 offices at the whole firm. And he calls everyone in. We all pile into the conference room. I think they had to have like 3 sessions because there's 150, 200 people a session.
What were you thinking right before, like when they start calling you all these people in? Like, were you still of the mindset of like, I don't know what's going on?
He was just going to explain it. Yeah. I was like, okay, I guess.
But is that normal? Like, was that normal procedure?
Yeah, when a law comes out, fuck yeah.
Okay, cool.
He's a manager.
I don't know shit.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, like, that's That's the kind of thing these guys lived for.
So this is just kind of another day, though. Like, but when you were going into this, yeah.
I didn't think anything of it.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna finally find out what it is, see what we got to do. And I remember we all sit in there, everyone's kind of whispering, and he gets up there, and before he starts talking, he hasn't quieted everyone down. He kind of like clasps his hands together, and he like walks around a little bit, collecting his thoughts, and like that thing goes on his face. You know, like when someone goes into a sales call, they could be sitting there talking to you like this, and they're like, hold on, let me dial. Hey, Jim, how are you? What's going on? What kind of day is it today for you? Oh, it's great for me outside. It's 60 degrees. Listen, I got a great offer for you. It's something you're not going to be able to turn up. Like, all that. Like, that thing happens. And I literally watch his face, like almost the blood, like went in a different direction. It just transforms. And everyone quiets down. He starts talking, and he goes, everybody, thank you for coming here today. And I got to tell you, in all my years working for this wonderful firm, today is one of the most important days we've ever had. And at this point, I'm like, wait, isn't this about the law he was shitting on? And now I'm like tuned in. And he goes, thanks to President Obama, we are now officially a profession. This is going to be one of the best things that ever happened to us. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is the guy who was just shitting on this 7 months ago, or 5 months ago, whatever it was. And the law, as it turned out, was the exact things that were the rumors. It was like people knew. So turned out everything he was talking about was true. And now here he was selling it to us. And I said to myself, I walked out of there, I'm like, what changed? And I'm like, oh, this guy makes $1.6 million as a manager of one of the biggest offices at the firm, but he's just a key on the cog. And so he got on a conference call with the guys who are way up above him who said, here's what we think, as a not we, like just us. We as a company think X, Y, and Z about this new law. And so here's what you're going to tell your people to get them excited about it. There's no thinking for yourself. There's no trying to draw a logical conclusion. There's no thought about what's in the best interest of the client, which was literally the definition of the law. Do what's in the best interest of the client, fiduciary standard. There's no thought about that. It's bullshit. We're just going to accept every single thing that was said here, and now we're going to sell it to everyone as, no, we knew this was coming and we loved it. And that actually ended up being the beginning. I mean, I think it happened before that, but it was the real beginning of the end for Merrill Lynch. And Merrill Lynch's entire asset management business is dead now. I mean, it's just dying like crazy. My boss, for example, after I left the firm, he'd been there for 30 years. He's one of the biggest producers at the entire firm. He's a managing director. Out.
Oh, wow.
Left. Went to another firm. Went to another bank because it was that bad. It was that bad. So that was a huge eye-opening day for me because I said, this man who is clearly an intelligent individual, he's not a dumbass, right? He's handcuffed.
He threw on the facade. He's making a mill.
Yep.
Cool.
He's handcuffed.
I'll do whatever you guys need me to do.
Exactly. And so that is a downside of corporate America. I think it's far worse at banks than it is at other places, but it exists everywhere, and there's got to be some ways to work against it so that you get the good side of corporations to come out. You can see in a totally different example, you can see similar things when social events happen and corporations give really hollow, just not genuine comments at all, just to get brownie points, and then it becomes like a thing that is decreed within their firm and no one can speak otherwise. The most egregious example of that, as far as like not even one that was started with comments, but you saw like the James Damore thing at Google a few years back. You know, he was a guy who wrote an internal memo trying to break down the issues with why there are fewer females working in a lot of positions.
This was the beginning of a lot of this, too,
yes,
where you go,
in 2017.
Whoa. This is not about what he said. This is one of the first ones where you go, this is like the Dave Chappelle, we just say what it is, but we don't quote it, right? That's one of the first ones where you go, nobody read this fucking thing.
Yeah.
And so nobody's going to read it, so we'll just plant a headline, place it there, we'll say this is what he said, and people will believe it. But it was one of the first instances, at least in my mind, where I heard Joe talking about it, and I'm like, okay, let me read it, let me check it out. And I actually read it, like some of it, not the whole thing, but then I'm like, all right, this guy's not anything like they're portraying him to be. And it was one of the first examples of that.
He was really fair. he may have been a little overly pragmatic. I believe, if I remember this correctly, I think he talked about this like he has Asperger's or something like that. So he's a little bit slightly socially off, which you should have empathy for, if anything. But the paper...
No, but if we paint a picture of you, then we can't have any nuanced perspective of you at all.
The paper was fine, and the reaction ended up being he was fired, therefore canceled and all this shit. And you have Sundar Pichai, the leader of Google, coming out talking about how we don't condone this type of whatever. And I don't think Sundar actually thinks that. No. In fact, I wonder if Sundar actually read it, because on his list of priorities of things to do, this should be near the goddamn bottom, including once it blew up. In a way, I'm like, why is he even worried about
isn't
that?
it weird that hitting a checkbox for them was just being like, we don't condone this? Like,
exactly.
Isn't that odd, though?
That's my point.
Yeah.
It ends up infecting everything to where there are just certain things that this is just how we have to do it because it presents the least problems for us. Mm-hmm. Not what is the long-term viability of the space we create. It's what is the short-term viability of what can present the least problems, because we have a quarterly report to go to and my ass is on the line as an individual, as an individual, as a CMO, CEO, CFO, whatever, if we don't do blank right now. That's the issue.
Yeah, I kind of, somebody that I do have respect for in that arena is Dorsey, which I know he's not really involved in Twitter. I don't think
I'm a huge Shaq Dorsey fan.
Yeah, like I know, like I don't think a lot of people kind of understand how things. I mean, there's this whole thing about people just demonizing CEOs and just people don't really know what CEOs do or why. How much money they make compared to people who are invested in the company. And,
exactly. But by the way, not to cut you off for a second, but
go for it.
The exact reason I say what I say about corporations too. People, including myself, by accident sometimes will just demonize all corporations. That's not right. We should not do... Nothing is very few things in life. Maybe not nothing. Very few things in life are a perfect generalization. Yeah. So I agree with your point there.
Yeah. And it's like... That's kind of tough because it's like, oh, cliches are true for a reason, but it's like there's not a lot there. You can't in something like that. Well, that's just not having an understanding of business, because business is not what it looks like on the outside. It's what it looks like on the inside. It's what it is on the inside. That's really business. The outside is external things or externalities. There's their marketing. Anything you see on the outside is basically marketing. I don't even care if, like, you can kind of chop it up to branding, marketing, sales. But there's a lot of, you don't see operations on the outside, Exactly. Or you don't see these nuances of business. So people see headlines about a business, but they don't know we only have as much information as this person who's criticizing it. So I'm like, okay, well, you would have to find out more information about that business to understand. Listen, I'm not justifying Spotify and paying their artists less, but when people say, Spotify doesn't pay enough, then I say, what should they pay? And I say, what's the fair market value of your music? Mm-hmm. And are they paying you the fair market value of your music? Well, then you should go elsewhere. It's like, there's just all these, and I'm a fucking artist and I release music on Spotify and I've been on Spotify for 5 years. But I just think people just don't like this, and they don't want to get into the weeds and try to understand business. They want to just say, oh, the CEO should make less money or something, which is like the wackest arguments that I've heard. But
well, there's two things there. One thing we can come back to, the societal economic social forces all meeting each other in anger over the wealth gap, which manifests itself in things like that, like just demonizing all CEOs and all corporate entities who are the pinnacle of what society views as rich society and who are part of the rigged game, which certainly some things are rigged, no doubt about that.
100%.
But, there's good and bad.
You can rig it legally.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's called taxes. It's called incorporating,
Well, that's a whole different conversation.
That's more you than me, man. I won't speak.
But you look at, there was one direction I wanted to take this. I don't want to miss it, but I can't remember what it was. Because what was that last point you made?
About the artists and people assuming Spotify.
Oh, I know what it was. Yeah. I know what it was. Who is the one entity that outside of some of the worst of the quote-unquote mainstream media who just loves to hate on anything. Who is the one entity that is questioned the least and viewed among the corporate elites the least? It's going to be obvious when I say it, but it's a very wide question. I don't expect you to get it right.
Oh, man. But it's a corporation, you're saying?
Yeah, I'll put it this way. There's a huge face behind them.
I guess Amazon, right?
No.
Oh.
No.
Was that a good guess?
No.
Oh, shit.
No, sorry.
Okay, I'm doing Tret, do you want to hop in?
I'm just being honest.
Do you want to try?
No, I'm not even going to try.
If I said that there's a company out there who's a huge company, but when you think of the company, you do not think of the company, you think of the person. The old answer would have been Steve Jobs with Apple.
Tesla or...
No,
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Tesla, I'm going to put it all under one umbrella. SpaceX, the companies that are Elon Musk. They're huge companies. They make a lot of money. They have a lot of inside deals, just like as they should in some ways as a corporation. And I bet you if you pulled all the Elon fanboys, of which I'm certainly one, off the street, a lot of people couldn't tell you the first fucking thing about their operations and all the stuff that we might complain about at other places. Mm-hmm. But you know why they're stans of Tesla and SpaceX and love it? They're stans because of Elon. And you know why they're stans of Elon? Because for better or worse, including sometimes where you're like, what the fuck did you just say? Elon goes right to the people. Elon doesn't hide behind statements. Elon decides to just, if he wants to tweet like, oh, our stock's too high, which is a very bad idea to tweet that, he'll tweet it.
Yep.
He doesn't give a fuck. My dad tells me he's getting sued in Delaware court all the time.
Yeah.
Like he has to show up sometimes too, and he's just like doesn't give a fuck about anything.
Care about this.
He's like, it is what it is, part of doing business. But he could avoid a lot of that if he towed the corporate line and not said anything. Mm-hmm. When you look at all these other companies, how often do you see them actually just throw the phone around to themselves and make a statement?
Yeah.
Or send out a tweet that's not clearly written by their PR department.
He's clearly different.
Right? I don't know why in this day and age we do not have leaders widespread across corporations who are fucking loose and fast and are just like, fuck it. I got nothing to hide. I'll tell you better or worse, and people will love you for it.
Well, I think it's first of all it's personality, and then part of it is profits. Elon's companies he can do that. Like if profits dip, that's okay, because if that wasn't okay, he wouldn't do it. Right?
Yes, but what about all the big companies I could say the same thing about?
Yeah, but then it's not okay in their company to do that.
So,
meaning the other people who are the shareholders or the board or whatever it is, if they did that, they're scared. Like there's definitely the reason they don't do it is because it has to be because of fear. There's no other reason, because Elon doesn't have fear about that, He also doesn't have fear in the disappointment of honesty about things, which is very, very important. There was a show way back in the day I did not watch. I was way too, I don't know if I was born when it came on. No, I was born. But it was like from maybe 98, 99, whatever, West Wing. I think it went into 2000. I've heard of it. I've never watched it.
So Charlie Sheen's dad, Martin Sheen, played the president in there, Jed Bartlett. And I think I watched that show in college on Netflix or something. And it's an idealistic view of what the presidency would be and what they'd stand for, which is kind of sad when you think about it. But there was a scene, I think, in the first season that stuck with me at the time when I knew very little about the world, and it just gets stronger and stronger over time because it was so ahead of its time, with an example being quite literally in the Oval Office. And I'm like, this is how it's done. But the president is talking at a press conference, and he just had to make some sort of deal on some sort of bill that fucked over some people who voted for him, because there's trade-offs and stuff, right? If I come out as a candidate and I have these 200 priorities, right? If I have them ranked, right? One is more important than another. If priority number 4 comes up in a bill, but I got to fuck the people in priority 196 out of my 200, I might do it. It's a cost to do. It sucks, and it shouldn't have to be that way, but our system unfortunately is. It's a downside of it, and so you might have to do that. So at this press conference, he had just signed a bill or some shit like that, and he's getting asked about it by the media, and one of the reporters gets up really angry and says, Mr. President, when you sign this bill or whatever, you effectively agreed to X, Y, and Z, which goes directly against what you campaigned on to win office, where you told the people of this group that they would have X, Y, and Z, and now you are taking that from them in order just to get your bill done. What do you have to say to those people? And he looked down and then looked back up, and very little hesitation, like maybe 0.3 seconds like that, and said, I'd say I screwed you. And everyone in there was like, what the fuck? And he looks right at it. He goes, I screwed you. 100%. And if those people never want to vote for me, they have every right not to vote for me, because what I said on the campaign trail ended up not being true. I will tell you why I did it right now. And he laid out exactly that point. This is what I could get. That's what I had to give up. It sucks. Those people have every right to be angry at me, and I'm sorry. It's a part of the system. And if you hold that against me, I will not blame you. Now, if you're someone who got fucked right there, maybe that number 196 wasn't the only thing you care about. If it's the only thing you care about, you're probably never voting for this guy. But maybe you say, like, well, I appreciate the honesty, right? So he's not the devil in your eyes. But if you're somebody who got fucked and there's a couple other issues you care about that he supports, you might say, you know what? I like this guy. That sucks, but what would I have done in that position? You know what? I might have done the same thing. And what this guy was doing in a show from 98 or whatever it was in the pre-social media era as a president character demonstrating full-blown radical transparency that is not always friendly. And people got behind it. And you look across culture, you look at people that people hate. Elon Musk is an example. Another way different example that really shouldn't matter that much because he's supposed to be a comedian. But like you look at Dave Portnoy. Dave Portnoy, I mean, the shit that guy says, to tell the truth, is like sometimes beyond the pale. I'm even uncomfortable for him. But you can't really that's why he can't get canceled. You can't really question him because, I mean, he'll sit there and give you DMs of him talking about some chick with astrology.
This is a terrible analogy, but he's like the Elon Musk of media, kind of a little bit.
It's not a terrible analogy. That is I very much agree with what that is. Their viewpoints are different.
Yeah,
their priorities
just
are
in
different.
the way. I mean, shit. Yeah, man. I mean, to that point of he. Dude, one of my favorite ones of him is when he's on. Lady pulls up next to him. He's doing the pizza thing. He's like has pizza. If you don't know Portnoy, just look up Portnoy pizza. You watch 3 of them, you'll get it. And he's on there, and so the lady comes down the street, and he's got the pizza, and she's like, "Oh my god, my husband loves you." And the husband's on the Bluetooth in the car, and she's like, "Will you just talk to my husband?" He's like, "Yeah, like fucking whatever."
I think I
and
saw.
So he goes over and he goes, "Dave," he's like, "You got to go to this place." And then she goes, "Yeah, his family owns it." Or whatever.
Yeah. So.
And he goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" He's like, "I'm not gonna." And he looks at the camera and he goes, "This fucking," and he says the name of the place, "Fucking is terrible. They suck. Never go there." Like, yeah. It was just one of those where I'm like, wow, like this. You get a typical CEO of a company.
I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's a great place.
Exactly.
But
Oh no. Oh, sounds good. I'll get. Like, you take anybody else, that owns a media company, and they're gonna either just not talk to you at all, or they're just gonna be nice to you, just because they know they're on camera. Dave Portnoy, full flip,
What happens when these people get on camera? Do you think anyone talks like those motherfuckers on the news? Like, well, tonight, Jim, at the top of the hour, we have another molestation in the church. Approximately 7 kids have come forward. Here's a picture of the potential abuser. And then they get off camera. They're like, "Give me my fucking liquor, bitch. Let's go."
We had a broadcaster on. I should just give you his information.
I've had one on too.
Oh, you got one too? Yeah.
I will actually give a lot of fairness to John Boric. John Boric talks that way in real life. Like, you will be shooting the shit with him, getting drunk, and like he's just.
I don't know
born,
about you, but my first
with
30 seconds of the podcast with him with Connor Mills. Shout out to Connor Mills, man. Public address announcer too. Yeah, dude. I said, "This is just how you talk," and he's like, "Yes, I do."
There's some people who legitimately talk like that.
I love you, Connor. Brother.
There are a lot of people who don't though. Like, you ever see
most people don't. If we're being honest here,
you ever see the bloopers of like the guy on camera is getting like stung by a bug? He's like, "Motherfucker, get this bug off me! God damn this shit!" And then he gets back and goes, "Well, Jim," and it's like I like the other guy a lot better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we had this standard in society that like, oh, that's how you got to do it.
And the way that we do this is fucking broadcasting. I guess this is like, talking shit basically, but we don't put on a facade for this. But I do. The only thing I can relate it to is like DJing and like MCing and things like that.
How
and doing
so?
live events. Because me and Tret did it we have a podcast that we do together, just me and him. And it's called The Shit Show. We just like pull random shit up on the internet and fuck around.
What is that short for, by the way? Tret.
It's not.
It's just Tret.
It's just Tret, yeah.
That's a pretty savage name.
I was waiting for somebody to ask you on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, so I was named after somebody, and it's actually their last name. So
was that like an offshoot, like where they were Trip, like they were a third, but people just somehow called him Tret by accident or something?
No, his legit last name was Tret, spelled the same way, Trett.
Oh, his last name.
Yeah.
They did the last name job on you.
Well, that's fine. Honestly, his first name's Elmer, so I'll take Tret.
Yeah, I wouldn't be saying the same about Elmer.
Yeah, exactly.
Elmer, we would just, all right, cool, man.
Yeah, you'd have a nickname.
Yep.
It'd be like Speed or some shit like, I don't know, something.
Yeah, dude.
Something that sounds cool. But anyway, you were talking about DJing.
Oh, yeah. So we did it on, that's where I was. So we have a podcast called The Shit Show where it's just me and Trent. We just fuck around, drink whiskey, and just pull shit up on the internet. And,
nice.
And, you know, we don't expect, I don't promote it. Like, the people who subscribe, some of them like it. That's kind of where it's at. It's a lot of fun to do. And so I was talking about DJing and my experience. I've been doing it since I was 16. And he was like, all right, just do like an introduction. So I did like an actual introduction that I would have done. And it's not like I don't talk like this when I do it. You know, I do have an inflection. Like I do have
and well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we got a show for you. You do one of those?
Yeah, it's a little bit more, refined, I would say.
I just pictured like a 1970s DJ. I'm sorry.
I know,
I
for
really
real.
dated you right there.
No, honestly, I kind of wish I was around for like turntables and shit. That was the real deal, man.
That was the real deal.
But yeah, anyway, like I when I started doing it, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing, so I basically just yell. Now I can actually talk and use an inflection and go up and then bring you back down. And I can, I know how to do an introduction with light music and an introduction with a very powerful music. Eye of the Tiger versus maybe, Tennessee Whiskey, right? So different inflections for those different types of songs, different types of scenarios. Do you have a slow dance or do you have an introduction where the bridal part is all fucking hammered, right? So there's going to be a guy trying to do a backflip. That's going to be a different introduction than I'm introducing. I just the other day introduced three sets of grandparents, and sometimes I have to introduce them at their table. Obviously, I'm not going to be like, "All right, let's get this." I'm not going to be.
You're not like the guy in The Hangover and singing every song redubbed, right?
No. At least I try not to be. That was way back.
What was the one song he was singing? Like a classic song. He's like. Oh, he would change. God damn it! That's gonna bother me. It's like in my head.
We're gonna have to look at it.
Trey, can you pull that up?
Yeah, look that up, dude.
In The Hangover, where he's re-singing the song, he's like, and I just, God damn it! What song is it? But he's taking like a regular song.
I literally just watched it the other day again when it was on, like the last quarter of it or something. It just randomly it's one of those movies now that's like just on.
Yeah.
And even The Hangover 2. I don't even think The Hangover's on. Maybe it was The Hangover 2 I was watching.
I don't want to close my fucking eyes or something like that. I don't want to fall the fuck asleep because I miss fucking you, baby. Or something like that. It's like that. Dude. See, that's obviously comedy. That's overboard. But like, not that you go there, but you read the room is your point.
But anyway, yeah. I read the room. But the thing is, like, with those news reporters, man, like, they are doing something. But how Connor explained it to me, and I know you had your experience, you interviewed somebody who does this too, but he was saying that it actually doesn't, they don't even, he's like, it's just journalism, like, not for the TV stuff, but he's like, for most of it, it's really just journalism. It's not, they don't even judge you on your voice. If you have a great voice, great, but like, just got out of college, he's a board operator. Just because you have an amazing voice doesn't mean you just go on and you're just on the radio or you're just on TV. So it starts with the journalism side, which, dude, I just see him talking. I don't even think about, wait, there's like stories and there's a way of going, there's the structure and it's so intricate. I just think, they just read the teleprompter and then they go home. And like, that's not it, man. I mean, at least, I don't know about the TV ones. He does radio and public address announcing which is another thing that seems, that voice when you're at a stadium and it's like, isn't that crazy, man? Imagine, like, see, honestly, I get more nervous for less people. If I have 500 people at an event, I'm good. Like, I'm straight. Like, I'm not even going to think about it. But if I have, like, 25 people and I'm sitting there and I'm the asshole with the microphone, and I got to, and I'm trying to hype people up. I remember doing this wedding, dude, and there was probably, I don't know if they didn't have that many friends, but like there was probably 70% older people who were just there for the meal, the dessert, and let's get out of here, you know? And no disrespect to any of these people, man. It's just like, all right, you're making my job a little hard. You know, now I got to really try. And
You're taking out the Dean Martin, taking out all the old shit.
Yeah, dude, like for late, but the introductions were like pop songs, dude. And I literally look out, ladies and gentlemen, please rise in your seats. It is time for our you know, and they're literally, I look at the seats and only like 6 people are standing.
Let's put a round of applause together for Dua Lipa.
Yeah, right? It was literally like fucking raise your glass and like there's a goddamn 78-year-old, but like none of them even stood up. You know, at that point I went, okay, this is what we're working with today. But yeah, man, I do have a little bit of a different voice for that, and I feel like some of those people do, and then some of them it's just fucking born, man. They're just embedded. I don't know. That's just their thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, we got into this talking about going straight to the people and being transparent and being kind of real. You don't need to like try and overdo it. Don't ever try to be something you're not. Like if you're a CEO of some major company, public company X, and like you see Elon Musk, don't try to then be Elon Musk and like tweet out memes very badly. You know, like you don't need to be a different person. But what you should do is figure out, well, what's the difference between him and me? And the difference is always, the number one thing is going to be clear. I hide behind statements written by somebody who works for somebody who works for somebody who works for somebody that's in my PR department that's supposed to get across X, Y, and Z of our messaging and using certain verbiage to make sure it's all correct such that the public can't question this and our shareholders won't question anything ahead of the quarterly.
Vanillaism.
Exactly. I haven't used that before. That's
either.
Great. Vanillaism is good.
I'll claim it. Write it down or
claimed.
It's pretty good.
Get that domain.
Vanillaism, I like it. But like, yeah, exactly. Like they'll use that and then they wonder why people, you know, body bag them on social media afterwards. Well, that's why. And in their defense, people still buy their fucking products. You know, it hasn't punished the major corporations. You know, everyone can try a Nike boycott if they like disagree with something they did politically. I think that's fucking stupid. Like it doesn't last. It only bolsters their sales, and like it reiterates that they can be not transparent about other things that are outside of whatever your politics are. You know, it's another thing. Like we overly politicize everything. It's like, dude, give me a fucking break. Like if a product's good and like they're not starting World War III as a company, like I'm gonna fucking buy it. I don't care.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, that's. I know. I was. Do you know what service do you use to upload your podcast? It's a distribution. Libsyn. Okay. Somebody was shitting on me for suggesting. I used Anchor for the first 2 years. Somebody was like, not shitting on me. Like that's not how it was. They were just disagreeing. They thought that I shouldn't promote Anchor, and they say, their values and their. And I said, okay, this is my. You can post about the way that you look at it. When I look at a company, I go. Because I'm thinking about it, what's the perspective of somebody trying to start a podcast that basically has nothing?
Were you in person with this person questioning you?
Oh, no. This is online. It's a whole different scenario.
Next time respond, say, what are you wearing right now?
That's usually my go-to, but it was in the comment section.
No, not for sexual reasons, though. That's pretty funny. I'm saying, what are you wearing right now? Because they're going to tell you, like, fucking Gucci's or whatever they're going to tell you. You're going to be able to pick out some sweatshop somewhere where some kid is like a 2-year-old with their fucking fingers falling off.
Dude, they have a phone in their hand. We all know where these phones come from.
Best example.
Just look it up on Google. I'm not the guy.
Where'd you send that fucking text from? Your phone? You slave laboring piece of shit.
My metric was, okay, what's the price of it? Does it put your podcast on multiple platforms? Does it own your podcast? Okay, yes, it puts you on multiple platforms. It's free. They don't own your podcast. Okay, wait, so you can do graphic design in the app? You can make a logo in there? Crude as fuck, but you can do it. You can edit your podcast. You can record with multiple people. It's probably dog shit, but you can do it. Okay, it turns out this platform is pretty good. I don't care about, like, because the way that I'm looking at it is somebody who just needs the information. And if I tell them, hey, you can use Captivate, Libsyn, Buzzsprout, blah, 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 this, that, Castos, whatever, that doesn't help them. Because now I gave them more problems. Now they said, the podcast guy said there's 10. You know? So that's the way that I look at it. But it's kind of funny, Manny. I don't really listen, I'd like to look into the companies, right? You can look into my company. Our core values are trust, impact, and transparency. Okay, it's on the website. But I don't need. It's not that I look up other companies and I go, what are their core values
Look,
before I buy something?
You can walk up to any glass house and start rubbing the fucking dirt off and realize it's a glass house. Just because it has dirt on the outside blocking it doesn't mean it's a glass house. And that's what people like to do. They like to throw bombs from glass houses, and they actually think they're not in them. And, you know, you can find it on anywhere. You are never going to work in today's global environment. You are never going to do something that's not with some sort of company that has some sort of compromisation somewhere. It's just, what is the soup du jour today for someone to tweet about it and get the most amount of likes from the Twitter mafia? And therefore, those companies that are in the middle of that crossfire are the ones that you can't work with. I mean, you see what we're doing right now to, like, every company in Russia. Does every company in Russia want to invade Ukraine and like kill civilians? No, they do not. Is it fair that the at least 40% of society in Russia who fucking hates Putin is now completely punished by what, a tyrannical dictator who they have no sway over to do what he does?
Wouldn't that be like saying that? That would be like saying that, oh, everybody likes Biden.
Exactly. Or everybody likes Trump.
Well, they're
right?
all supporting Biden because they live in America. Wouldn't that be the same?
How about the fact that we invaded Iraq for oil money?
Oh no, dude. There's too many other examples.
Same shit.
I mean, listen, and I'm not the guy. Listen, I don't really know geopolitics or anything like that. But there's atrocities happening.
Yeah.
And I know. Listen, they're an ally, and there's a lot of there's a lot of things that I don't understand. So I'm really speaking out of turn. But
no, it's okay.
But
no one understands the full scope of this thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's so. How far have you dove into it?
Pretty heavy. You have to be very careful what you look at.
You had some clips been reposting a lot lately about before this even happened, right? You had been
that was
talking.
A separate issue. Yes, it was within this issue, but not obviously like on the actual invasion. I mean, obviously, you look at this. You're a human being. What's happening to Ukraine is disgusting, and I feel horrible for those people. I think President Zelensky, I admire the fact that the guy said "fuck you" to, you know, getting asylum. Said I'm gonna stay here and fight. If I die, I die. I think that's an amazing thing. So I think we're seeing a lot of amazing things from the Ukrainian people. Unfortunately for them, and this is not their fault, this is a really awkward situation. And by awkward, I really should say like dire situation. You know, you have a world power invading a sovereign nation that people would consider of the first world, which is a whole nother thing, by the way. You know, I don't see the same energy. There's brown kids getting bombed every fucking day in the Middle East. It's gross. We've also been at fault for it in America, heavily.
Dude, we fly video games into people.
Agreed. That's a good way to put it. Sad, but true. Like, and I don't see the same energy for that, and it's not taking anything away from the Ukrainian people, but I got a problem with that. I don't think any of this shit should be happening. I recognize the world is a fucked up place, though, and some things do. Just don't be hypocritical and suddenly be like, oh, because it's happening to Ukraine where it's all white people, like, now we give a total fuck about it, and this is disgusting and it must be stopped. The issue here is it is a world power in the middle of it with a quote-unquote sovereign nation located in the block of countries that make up the EU, even though they're not in it. And so if you then... considering like their history together, by the way, Ukraine and Russia, the ex-USSR and all that, if you take certain actions here, you are going to hawkishly precipitate World War III. Like, I see the ball moving in the court of now the public suddenly starting to advocate for like for no-fly zones and stuff. This is bad, man. You're not talking, I mean, no disrespect, but you're not talking about a country with 100,000 people in it. You're talking about Russia. They have nuclear fucking codes everywhere. They're invading a country right now that has, I don't know how many, but it's several different nuclear sites, you know, all kinds of different chemical laboratories.
I would just say, Ukraine, if you get a second try, look up MMA fighters from the Ukraine. Dude. All right. They don't make these people the same.
Yeah, same as Russia, though, too. Yeah. Like, it's the same type of area of the world.
For sure.
But still, like, you look at it, and now you got all these people marching in the streets in solidarity with Ukraine, calling, which is fine. The second part, though, calling for no-fly zones when they have no fucking idea what that means. I mean, there's a lot of shitty information out there. By far, it's not, in my opinion, from what I've looked at. I'm sure there's other stuff that I haven't. It has to be. But by far, the best covers of the situation I've seen is from Crystal and Sagar of Breaking Points. They've been the best. They have absolutely made things down to a simple level as to what the key things at stake here are. And credit to them, they were right on this thing when the first people on the mainstream news and on the internet started calling for no-fly zones. They were all over that. Again, you have someone who's slightly right with Sagar, and you have someone who's slightly left with Crystal, so it's a great balance. They were united all over this about why that is a disaster, because no-fly zones essentially mean that you have to enforce. They don't essentially mean, they mean you have to enforce them. So if you create a no-fly zone over Ukraine and Russian planes go into Ukraine, you have to shoot them down. That is an act of war. And then, by the way, you also have to shoot down their regular bases as well. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things. We don't have to go all the way down, but there's other things you have to then preemptively attack, or as a response attack. And so if you start provoking them, you are going to get into a point here where, what do you think? They're going to sit there and play dead? Look, I think Putin's an awful guy. I've been trying to say that for years. A lot of people have been trying to say that for years. I don't think there's a good argument to say otherwise. He's a fucking KGB holdover who's been a dictator for, call it, 23 years, basically. I mean, the guy even, I forget what it was, but like, he had to leave office because of term limits at one point, and he installed the president, made himself prime minister, still ran everything, changed the law or whatever it was. Go look it up. I forget exactly the details. Came back as president.
And he's tried to do this before, well.
And it's like, he's crazy. You have to look at what is the least worst. And as much as you want to say, fuck you and kill him, number one, it really can't come from the outside.
Well, also power vacuum. We know this from...
That's exactly it.
All these other people.
Number one, it can't really come from the outside because that's an active war. It's a problem. It needs to come from the inside. So someone there has to kill him. Yep. Number two, if they do, who replaces them?
That's what I'm saying. Power vacuum.
Yeah, the power vacuum. And it's
not the same as the Middle East, but it's the same concept.
It's the same. It's human nature. It's the same everywhere.
It's human too.
If you don't kill the ideology itself, which is that oligarchical fascist ideology, that control ideology that he has, you don't accomplish the goal. You don't take him out. So, as much as you want to see the blood, right, and get rid of him and say like, score, you do have to look at the well-being of the world, not just Ukraine. Ukraine's well-being should absolutely be a priority right now. Then it's beyond that and say, well, if we do X for their well-being, what does that mean for Y?
Dominoes.
Which is what are the dominoes? And so you need to figure out a way where you negotiate and give Putin some things that he wants. And if I had the full answers to this, I'd be over there negotiating right now. I'm being paid money to do it, but I don't. What I'll say is that if you look at their early offers on it, where they want, I'd never pronounce the stuff right, but they want like the DNR and the two sovereign areas, or what they view as should be sovereign independent areas on the east side of Ukraine that should be like their own thing and not associated with Ukraine. Russia wants them independent. They want to officially take Crimea, which effectively they've had since 2014, so that's not a real thing. And they want assurances that Ukraine won't join NATO. The problem right now is that they want more than that. They want like demilitarization, which is a non-starter, because that would mean like, oh, this country just got invaded by you is going to say, you know what, we don't need a military either. Like,
yeah, we're good.
Yeah, that doesn't work. But if you can find a way to get to the table and get him to take those three things, which are huge, you're giving him W's. You are giving him W's. And this is what you got to live with, because you are going to leave him in power, and you are going to give him good political propaganda, and you are not going to get the bloodlust that the whole world wants because of the disgusting war crimes, frankly, that he's done to Ukraine. But you will prevent World War III in doing it. If you can get those three things, the no NATO, the DNR and LSK or whatever the fuck it is as independent, and Crimea to Russia, you gotta win a slight win for everyone here. My one issue, which is why I said I can't fully solve this problem at this point, is that how do you create a stipulation that also highly discourages him from ever trying this again to go take more? Because let's be honest, 8 years ago he went in and took Crimea. Now he's back, 8 years later, taking the next part. He's like biting off pieces. How do you make sure he doesn't say 5 years from now, I'm going to bite off another piece?
It's like cyber attacks.
Yeah, sure. Like if it's escalation, right?
You're not supposed to give him the money, right? That type of thing.
Sure. So how do you, without saying Ukraine's going to join NATO, which would break that agreement, how do you ensure that he's not going to do that? Is there a way to say, well, if you did this again, NATO, without Ukraine, will attack you? Which then in his mind may effectively say, so they're pretty much a part of NATO, right? I don't know how you solve that, but there needs to be some sort of deterrence for him to do this again.
I think this is not to downplay any of this, but I feel like we've kind of, U.S., I'm saying we, when I say we, I mean the U.S., has kind of been a pretty large focus of a lot. I mean, through Trump, obviously, is massive. This is kind of the first time in a little while that, like, another area is focused on in this way. Obviously, this is something that's different. Even so funny, I saw a Gary Vee post today, and he was like, events. You know, he's from Belarus, but he's like, oh, these events or whatever, and people just shitting on him, being like, events, Gary, are you crazy? Like, just because he called them events, and I don't want to downplay anything that's happening.
These, I'm just like, saying, events.
Are you kidding me? Events. This is not just
it's fucking Gary. Sad things. I will send whatever money. We'll give an NFT. We'll give an NFT out there. We'll give it to both sides. No one heard that. Like,
dude, do you have an NFT? Wait, how old are you? 27?
You shouldn't be focused on war. Focus on NFTs. I'm not building for 4 months from now. I'm building for 40 fucking years from now.
Dude, if I was Putin, I would totally, like, I realize I have a lot of time. I have like 30 years.
You can delta 30 years out of this.
If I was the president of Ukraine, I would totally just make an NFT and just like
that guy needs a mute button. He really does,
dude. Or like a fucking weed hit or something, dude. Give him a hit of a joint.
He really does need to try weed.
Yeah,
I know. He's real. Like, so he's hanging out with all these rappers, and you're telling me, and he apparently has. Like, I'm sure he gets secondhand and doesn't realize it, but he really needs to like take a good hit of a blunt. You met Gary?
Mm-hmm. He's a good guy. He's a nice guy. So my neighbor's his dad's landscaper. So when I went to the store to meet him, because like they had a meetup at Wine Library, and I saw his dad out in the parking lot like directing cars. So I'm like, hey, Sasha, what's going on? You know, like I dropped my neighbor's name, who I've been known my entire life, and he's like, oh yeah, man, like I've known them they've been doing this, working for me for a long time or whatever. So then we started chopping it up with him, and then the story I've told it to so many times, but he was great in person. He's a great guy in person.
Listen, I always say this about Gary because I make fun of him on things like that, and it is funny, and he does drop a lot of the same content over and over again, which drives me nuts. But with Gary, there is the good is good. When Gary is right, he is fucking right, and it's not like, oh, he was pretty good there. It's like, no, wow, he nailed that.
No, and he opens your mind, too. That's the thing.
Yes, there is a lot of good with Gary. My things that I complain about are using the same content over and over again. It gets a little old, being too hyper-aggressive on trying to be great at everything to just get yourself involved. I don't like that. And also, I think he way over, to use his word, over deltas, telling everyone to just put content out all the time, no matter what. I think he's hurt. He's helped on the top end of quality content. He's hurt on the volume of content because people think if they just participate and do it on a certain schedule, they'll win no matter what. So you see a lot of shitty content.
Thanks for watching. Join us next week for part 2 of Julian Dorey. And if this is past the month of April 2022, then that means that interview is already out. So you can catch that right now using the link in the show notes or the description below. Once again, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And I would love to hear your honest review of the interview in the comments below, because that's what helps us get better and improve so we can bring better podcasts to you. All right, guys, my name is Sully Bop, also known as Ryan Sullivan, and today this has been another episode of Bopcast with Julian Dorey. We'll see you next week.
Oh, you're like a 9 to 5, gotta put in that time.